Hi, my name's Cameron, and odds are if you're watching this channel, you've actually picked up a 35mm film camera, medium format film camera in the past, or even a digital full frame, modern professional body, or even, depending on your age, an old digital point and shoot, which are slowly becoming more and more popular for reasons we'll talk about later in this video. But today I wanted to share with you a recent still life project that I put together. We'll title it A Fruit Study, using a medium format digital sensor that I actually have the opportunity to work with. And to be more specific, I used a Mamiya RB67 body with a phase 1 H20 back. Now the H20 back was originally designed for the Hasselblad V system. Obviously it's being adapted and it has less coverage than that 6x7 negative, but overall yields really beautiful results. And that sensor design is actually not what common film sensors are today that are all CMOS technology. It's an old CCD sensor, which again, to pull on this point and shoot again, that's why they're becoming sort of all the rage, because the colors you get are very film-esque and have a certain aesthetic to their overall taste and appearance. And as you'll see, I'll walk you through this entire video of setting up the shoot, the color science, and sort of how I planned out what complementary colors I would use, and keeping in mind all those design constraints with using a medium format body and back that is almost 20 years old now, and using it in a modern workflow in a way that can produce professional results. The great thing about this is, in terms of people who are price conscious, I would say, instead of having to drop $8,000, $9,000 on a new medium format digital body, these backs are available for, I would say, $300 to $500 on eBay, albeit with a lot of significant trade-offs in the workability and workflow. So obviously it is to your advantage to have a camera you can kind of take out. This is one you have to tether. But that being said, the final results I'll share on my computer in Lightroom and walk through sort of the flat raw TIFF files that come out of the program, and then how I color graded them to achieve the final result. So let's get after it. So to give an overview of the shoot I had lined up with Megan here, we're working out of a studio. I have obviously a lot of props and things sitting around, but we really wanted to keep this super simplistic, so I stopped at a craft store and picked up some multicolored paper. I had no clue what fruits I would get at the store. I was just gonna kind of fly by the seat of my pants and find whatever looked the freshest or the most ripe. And here I'm setting up the lights and dialing in sort of the look we're going for and some of the posing techniques. So we're using the hands and the fingers, and Megan here is hand modeling. Obviously starting from a place of a clean cut to the fruit to a little more destructed and interfered with the fingers. Overall, I have these strobes hooked up to the camera. I'm using an old Norman P2000D strobe pack, but anything like ProPhoto or Godox would work as well. I will say that the native ISO for this camera is actually pretty high or fairly low, or requiring a high amount of light at ISO 50 or ISO 100. Those are your only two options. And the Mamiya RB67 body that I'm using here, I have a 180mm lens, which is ballpark around 105 on 35mm full frame, and you actually have to rack in and rack out the bellows to focus the camera, particularly at these close distances. So that being said, there were some struggles in terms of establishing enough depth of field. I'm shooting most of these at f16 or f22, but really it's tough to get that much light with such a small aperture, and again, such a low sensitivity. These are tethered to a MacBook PowerBook G4. So this is pre-Apple laptop that had so old it has a CD drive. I believe it's from 2003 or 2004. And the digital readout passes through a very, I think it's old version of Capture One. So it's Capture One 4, and I believe we're on Capture One 23. And you're seeing the results as they come through, and it's pretty nice to have that CCD sensor. and overall, in terms of the CCD sensor and workflow, it's just like a normal digital camera, but you get really, really nice raw files. Again, I'll go into more detail whenever we get into the Lightroom portion of the video, but overall the camera was quite heavy and cumbersome to use, but once you have the metering set up, that's the biggest thing. I will say my only caution to people who may be interested in trying this is make sure your metered exposure is spot on, because if you're a stop above or a stop below, it's sort of like slide film where things can fall apart very, very quickly, so keep that in mind. Hey, welcome to the Lightroom portion of this video. Just wanted to show sort of the breadth of what these files really look like, having had the opportunity to shoot with a medium format digital back, albeit an older one. So again, to refresh memories here, I used the Phase 1 H20 digital back, came out early 2000s, originally intended for Hasselblad, so it's a square format. But I have it adapted to the back of a Mamiya RB67, in this case with a 90mm lens. I use the same lens across all of these images. Basically, the workflow is you have to tether the camera, and in tethering, you get that obviously digital readout in an old version of Capture One, in really nice, flat, super rich 16-bit raw files that end up being exported as TIFFs. So they're around, I would say, like 95 to 100 megs a piece, which is really impressive considering the workflow back in the day. Now, to give you an idea of how flat these are to start, this first image of the grapefruit, it actually looks quite flat without all the color grading I've done. Being that it's a CCD sensor, and the film-esque nature of the sensor design, I thought it would be prudent to kind of match up the color profile with a film scanning color profile, to recreate that quote-unquote film look, or just sort of layer the colors in a way that seem a little more natural. I've never been a huge fan of digital sensors in their color science, but the CCD cameras I have quite a soft spot for. So you can see this is before, this is after, and you can really see a pretty significant difference here. As we go through these, we'll switch to the Kiwano. Again, before here as the image loads, and before and after. Had to do a little bit of white balancing and correction there, but the camera did a pretty good job of nailing that. I tried to keep all the settings as tight and controlled as possible. As you can see, I don't know if you've ever received film scans back from a lab, but this breakdown in the histogram is very, very film-esque in the way that it parses out color. So very happy with the result there. And again, these images are like ridiculously detailed, and to a degree that is really, really impressive. So given the size of the sensor, I believe it's like an inch and some change. And it was built 20 years ago. It's very impressive to see this level of detail, picking out micro bubbles within the fruit itself without having to worry about any sort of weird diffraction or issues with the lens. And of course, it's a testament to the Mamiya glass that's on the front of this as well. It shoots at a native ISO of 50, so you have to blast it with a ton of light. I shot most of these in the f11 to f16 range, being that it's medium format. That's around the f5.6 to f8 range on a regular 35mm camera. And moving along to the cantaloupe option that we have here. Again, you'll see how I went from a very flat profile to a very, very saturated and sensitive one. And again, directing you up to the exposure chart on the right here, we have information on the reds, greens, and blues, and very distinct indications of where the different colors show up in the actual raw file. So I'm very happy with that. Again, I use the color profile for the Negative Lab Pro program. So really, they're all loaded into my computer after you pay for it, and you can look through. I believe there's the pack-on film scanner, a natural emulator, which is unique to NLP, and then the final two are the Frontier and Noritsu scanners, and the Crystal Color Science as well. So they're all options here. I'm not a huge fan of any of them except for the Frontier and Pacon colors, and then here, particularly when you can shoot with very, very flat light, the Pacon Color Science really, really shines because you can separate reds from pretty much all the other colors. So if you can see, as you scale up the amount here, you're going to get really, really chunked out and clustered highlights and reds, and they get really, really, really intense. That being said, they do look really harsh, and I would say, I don't know, it's not aligned with my taste whenever you have too harsh of a lighting situation with that color science, whereas the Frontier or Noritsu options there will give much more pleasing skin tones and colors throughout the entire image, particularly if you have uncontrolled or sort of crazy contrast across the entire image. Again, just more references here of what a before and after looks like. It's impressive that my computer still sort of struggles with these files, given this size that they're at and the color depth of each file. Again, the final result is absolutely beautiful, and it's awesome to see how this detail has been rendered out over time. Now, if you had experience with a medium format digital back yourself, feel free to give me your thoughts, comments, ideas in the comment section below. I'm eager to try out more of these throughout this year and next. I'll probably be selling my full frame setup for a well, maybe not sell. I'll probably convert my full frame setup to a full spectrum camera to do more UV and infrared applications, and then get a dedicated medium format digital body to work off of. Likely Hasselblad. I've used Fuji as well, but I'll make a separate video about that. But I've been testing and trying out all of these different options to see what appeals to me most and what's most amenable to the workflow that I look for professionally. But again, if you had experience with this H20 back in general yourself, or you're curious or have questions about how I color graded any of these, please let me know in the comments below, and you'll have more videos coming soon with respect to medium format digital, and also some comparisons of film and digital itself. Well, that wraps up this video. Thank you all for following along, and if you've stayed tuned this entire time. I hope the information was useful and the experience sort of sheds light on a different area of photography that I think isn't as accessible, and there's not as much documentation and support around when it comes to sort of exploring new territories and seeing what art we can create. I'll have more medium format work in the future, videos comparing medium format film versus digital, both in the same settings as well, to sort of see what the color comparisons look like. And I also have work that I completed back in the fall that I still have to get around to making a video for with the Fuji GFX 100S2, as well as more film work in the future. So if you like what you see, feel free to subscribe. If you have any questions, drop a comment, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks.